On his first day at a nearly all-white high school, where outsiders are spotted before the first bell, a new black student steps into class. He spots the only empty desk by the window, its surface worn from years of use. Before he can reach it, bullies in letterman jackets block his path, shove the chair aside, and smirk for their audience. They have no idea his father is a mafia boss. To them, he's quiet, alone, and easy to intimidate. But what starts as a simple act of classroom bullying is about to spiral into something far more dangerous. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Malik stood in the doorway of his new English classroom. His worn paperback, a dog-eared copy of Native Son, pressed against his side through the fabric of his backpack. The smell of industrial floor cleaner and graphite hung in the air, mixing with the staleness of a room that had seen decades of students pass through its doors. His eyes swept across the classroom, taking in the faded motivational posters and the bulletin board crowded with honor roll photos. Not a single face looked like his. The sea of white faces staring back at him wore expressions ranging from indifferent to openly hostile. Several boys in letterman jackets huddled together, their matching Cabela's hoodies and camo baseball caps marking them as part of the same clique. Only one desk remained empty, a scratched-up metal frame by the window. Malik's jaw tightened as he spotted the Confederate flag sticker partially scraped off the underside, its stars and bars still defiantly visible. He squared his shoulders and walked toward it, feeling the weight of 24 stares following his every move. The squeak of his worn sneakers on the linoleum seemed unnaturally loud in the tense silence. Malik reached the empty desk and set his backpack down beside it with a soft thump. Before he could pull out the chair, a pristine white Nike Air Max swooped up and planted itself firmly on the seat's edge. Kenny Mays, his letterman jacket stretched across broad shoulders built from years of quarterback training, smirked up at Malik. "Go sit on the floor," he drawled, lounging back as if the classroom was his personal kingdom. His foot pressed harder against the chair, the clean white rubber sole a stark contrast against the scuffed metal. Behind Kenny, Cole Benton's sharp laugh cut through the air. The sheriff's son had his father's cold eyes and cruel mouth, both now twisted with obvious pleasure at the confrontation. Two more football players joined in the laughter, their matching jackets creating a wall of red and white fabric. Kenny's shoe suddenly pushed forward, the rubber sole grinding against Malik's thigh. The move was deliberate, a clear challenge that made Malik's muscles tense. He could feel the familiar pre-fight energy coursing through his veins, the same electricity he knew from countless sparring matches in the church basement gym. "This is a public school," Malik said, his voice low but firm. "I'll sit where I want." Kenny's smirk widened, showing too many teeth. "Not that one," he replied, voice dripping with false politeness. "It's reserved." "Yeah," Cole chimed in, his words sharp as broken glass. "For people who actually belong here. Not some charity case they dragged in to meet their quota." The classroom fell silent. Even the usual whispers and rustling of papers stopped. At her desk, Ms. Avery froze mid-roll call, her red pen hovering above the attendance sheet as uncertainty flickered across her face. From the corner of his eye, Malik noticed Rosa Vega, the yearbook photographer, slowly raising her phone just enough to capture the scene without drawing attention. "Guess they'll let anyone in these days," Kenny continued, his voice growing louder with each word, "even if they don't know their place." The racial undertone was clear as day. Cole leaned forward, emboldened by Kenny's lead. "Better learn quick, though. Some things around here are just tradition." He emphasized the last word with a meaningful glance at the Confederate flag sticker. Malik's hands curled into loose fists at his sides, his boxing training evident in how he subtly shifted his weight to the balls of his feet. The morning sun streaming through the window caught the dust motes swirling in the air, creating an almost dreamlike atmosphere that contrasted sharply with the very real tension building in the room. Kenny's grin turned predatory as he suddenly kicked back, shoving Malik's chair with enough force to send it skidding. In the same moment, Cole lunged forward and grabbed the desktop, flipping it upward toward Malik's chest. The desk crashed to the floor with a deafening metallic clang that echoed through the suddenly silent classroom. Malik's body instinctively dropped into the defensive stance drilled into him through countless hours of training. Feet shoulder-width apart, hands raised, elbows tucked, weight centered. His dark eyes locked onto Kenny's smirking face as the air crackled with the electricity of imminent violence. Malik's warning came out sharp and clear. "Step back. I don't want trouble." Kenny's response was a wild right hook that whistled through the air where Malik's head had been a split second before. Years of boxing training took over. Malik slipped the punch and drove his shoulder hard into Kenny's ribcage. The impact sent the quarterback stumbling backward, crashing into an empty desk with a metallic scrape against the floor. Before Malik could reset his stance, thick arms wrapped around him from behind. Cole's breath was hot against his neck as the sheriff's son tried to lock him in place. But Malik had drilled this exact scenario countless times in the church basement. He dropped his weight, twisted his hips, and hooked his foot behind Cole's leg. The throw was smooth. Cole's feet left the ground as Malik used the bigger boy's momentum to flip him over his hip. Cole landed hard in the aisle with a grunt that knocked the wind from his lungs. Rosa's phone tracked every movement, her steady hands capturing the perfect angle as a third football player, Tyler Matthews, charged in with fists swinging. Malik backpedaled, using an overturned desk frame as a shield. Tyler's wild punch glanced off Malik's forearm instead of finding its intended target. The impact stung, but Malik maintained his defensive position. Kenny had recovered by now, coming in low like a linebacker looking for a tackle. But Malik saw him coming. As Kenny lunged, Malik pivoted and brought his elbow down hard between Kenny's shoulder blades. The sharp crack of bone meeting bone made several students gasp. "Stop this right now!" Ms. Avery's voice cut through the chaos as she tried to reach the classroom phone. But the path to her desk was blocked by the maze of toppled chairs and scattered backpacks. Students pressed against the walls, their faces a mix of shock and excitement as they watched the fight unfold. The classroom door burst open with a bang. Leon Griggs, his gray janitor's uniform worn but crisp, wielded his mop handle like an old-time peacekeeper's staff. Despite his age, his movements were decisive as he used the wooden pole to create space between the fighters. "That's enough." Leon's deep voice carried the weight of decades of authority. "Break it up." Malik immediately took advantage of the intervention to step back, his hands raised to show he was done fighting. But Kenny wasn't finished. His face was red with rage and humiliation as he launched himself forward, ignoring Leon's command. The quarterback's shoulder caught Malik square in the chest, driving him backward until his spine hit the chalkboard. The impact sent a cloud of chalk dust into the air. The metallic taste of blood filled Malik's mouth where his teeth had caught his inner cheek. He wiped his lips with the back of his hand, leaving a crimson streak across his skin. Kenny drew back his fist for another blow, but Malik was faster. His palm shot out in a perfect strike, catching Kenny dead center in the chest. The force sent the quarterback reeling backward into the classroom bookshelf. Paperback novels and textbooks rained down around Kenny as he struggled to keep his feet. The room had devolved into complete disorder. Chairs lay on their sides like fallen soldiers. Loose papers covered the floor like fresh snow. Someone's notebook had exploded during the fight, sending loose-leaf pages floating through the air. The usually neat rows of desks had been transformed into an obstacle course of twisted metal and scattered supplies. Rosa's phone kept recording, capturing every detail. The way Malik had only struck in self-defense, how he'd been ambushed from multiple angles, the clear disparity in numbers. Her steady hands didn't miss a moment as Kenny's crew realized their star quarterback had been outmatched. The thunder of approaching footsteps echoed in the hallway. Multiple sets of heavy boots pounded against the linoleum, growing louder with each second. Cole was still trying to get up from the floor, his usual swagger replaced by a pained grimace. Tyler had backed away, suddenly less eager to continue the fight now that it wasn't 3-on-1. Kenny leaned against the bookshelf, one hand pressed against his chest where Malik's strike had landed, his face a mask of shocked disbelief. Leon kept his mop handle at the ready, creating a barrier between Malik and the others. The old janitor's eyes were sharp and alert, taking in every detail of the scene. His presence seemed to radiate a calm authority that even Kenny's crew couldn't ignore. Through it all, Malik maintained his boxer's stance, balanced and ready, but not aggressive. His breath came in controlled bursts, just like his trainers had taught him. The chalk dust settling around him caught the morning sunlight, creating an almost ethereal effect in the destroyed classroom. The classroom door banged open as Vice Principal Wexler charged in, his tie askew and face flushed. Two burly security officers flanked him, their uniforms stretched tight across broad shoulders. The fluorescent lights caught their silver badges as they moved into the chaos. "Everyone freeze!" Wexler's voice cracked like a whip. "Back to your seats, now!" Malik kept his hands visible, breathing hard through his nose. His jaw throbbed where he'd bitten his cheek, and his white collar was torn and speckled with blood. Across the room, Kenny struggled to his feet, still holding his ribs where Malik's shoulder had connected. His trademark smirk had vanished, replaced by a venomous glare. "Mr. Carter, Mr. Mays, opposite corners," one of the officers ordered, moving between them. "The rest of you, clean up this mess and sit down." Students scrambled to right overturned desks and gather scattered papers. The tension in the room remained electric as Kenny's football teammates helped him into a chair. Cole was still moving stiffly from his fall, his usual swagger replaced by a pronounced limp. "What happened here?" Wexler demanded, his eyes sweeping the destruction. Before anyone could answer, Ms. Avery stepped forward. "Sir, Kenny and Cole prevented Malik from sitting at an open desk. They provoked—" "I want to hear from the students involved." Wexler cut her off. "Carter, Mays, nurse's office, then my office. The rest of you stay put until statements are taken." Rosa tucked her phone away, her fingers already flying across the screen as she uploaded the video. She caught Malik's eye and gave a subtle nod. He understood. She had captured everything. The walk to the nurse's office was tense, with security keeping Malik and Kenny separated. The nurse, Mrs. Chen, clucked her tongue as she examined them. She dabbed antiseptic on Malik's split lip and checked Kenny's ribs for bruising, noting everything in her medical log with careful precision. "Nothing broken," she announced finally. "But there'll be some impressive bruises tomorrow." Malik sat in one of the hard plastic chairs outside Wexler's office, listening to the muffled voices inside. His phone buzzed constantly in his pocket, messages from other students sharing Rosa's live stream link. He sneaked a peek at the comments while the secretary wasn't looking. "Kenny threw first." Clear as day. New Kid was defending himself. Those guys have been pulling this stuff forever. About time someone stood up to them. The support was unexpected. Malik had figured he'd be automatically cast as the aggressor, but Rosa's video told the true story. Every angle showed him trying to de-escalate until he had no choice but to defend himself. When Wexler finally called him in, the vice principal's face was tight with frustration. Kenny sat sullenly in one chair, holding an ice pack to his chest. Cole occupied another, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. Given the circumstances, Wexler said carefully, and the video evidence circulating online, Mr. Mays and Mr. Benton will be suspended for 3 days pending further review. Mr. Carter, consider this a warning. Violence of any kind is not tolerated at Grantham High. Malik wanted to argue that he hadn't started anything, but he kept quiet. He recognized a partial victory when he saw one. As he left the office, Ms. Avery was waiting in the hallway. She pressed a blank incident report form into his hands. "Fill this out while everything's fresh in your mind," she said quietly. "Be detailed. I saw what happened, and I'll back your account completely." Malik nodded, grateful for her support. As he tucked the form into his backpack, Leon appeared beside him, mop in hand. The old janitor's eyes were kind but fierce. "I saw it all, son," he said in his deep, measured voice. "They picked the wrong kid today. Don't you worry about what comes next." The morning sun streamed through the front doors of Grantham High as Malik pushed them open. His mother's sensible sedan idled in the pickup lane, and he could see Darlene's worried face through the windshield. His victories felt fragile. Kenny's suspension, Rose's video, the support of Ms. Avery and Leon. But they were victories nonetheless. Students whispered and pointed as he walked past, some offering subtle nods of respect. His phone buzzed again with more notifications as Rose's video continued to spread through the town's social media. The truth was out there now, undeniable and raw. Every step toward his mother's car felt lighter than the last. He had refused to back down, refused to be bullied, and for now at least, the system had been forced to acknowledge the truth. It wasn't justice exactly, but it was a start. Darlene's knuckles were white on the steering wheel as she drove Malik home. The late morning sun filtered through the trees lining their street, casting shifting shadows across the dashboard. "I understand why you fought back," she said, breaking the tense silence. "But you have to be careful. This isn't like your old school." Malik shifted in his seat, wincing as his jaw throbbed. "What was I supposed to do, Mom? Let them push me around?" She sighed, turning onto their street. "No, baby. You did what you had to do. I'm proud you stood your ground. She parked in their driveway and turned to face him. "We moved here for a fresh start. I don't want things getting complicated." Inside their small ranch house, Darlene wrapped ice in a dish towel while Malik sat at the kitchen table. The familiar scent of her signature pot roast filled the air. Comfort food for a hard day. "Hold this against your jaw," she instructed, handing him the makeshift ice pack. 20 minutes on, 20 off. His phone buzzed again, the 15th time in the last hour. Malik checked the screen, seeing another message from Rosa with a screenshot of her video's view count. It had passed 5,000. "People are sharing it everywhere," he told his mother. "Most of them are on my side." Darlene spooned pot roast onto their plates, adding extra carrots to Malik's portion. "That's good, but don't let it go to your head. Eat your dinner while it's hot." They ate in companionable silence, the only sound the gentle clink of forks against plates and the steady hum of the window air conditioner. Malik's phone continued its irregular symphony of notification sounds. After dinner, Malik sprawled on the living room couch with his geometry homework, though he couldn't focus on the problems. His social media feeds were exploding with support. Fellow students sharing Rosa's video and calling out Kenny's crew for their behavior. The local news flickered on the TV at 9, and Malik's stomach dropped as he saw grainy footage of the fight. But something was wrong. The video started mid-brawl, showing only Malik throwing punches at Kenny and Cole. The crucial first moments were missing. "Mom," he called out, "look at this." Darlene hurried in from the kitchen, drying her hands on a towel. They watched in horror as Sheriff Roy Benton appeared on screen, his badge gleaming under the studio lights. "What we're seeing here is gang-style aggression," Benton declared, his folksy drawl carrying an edge of threat. "This kind of violence has no place in our schools. Rest assured, we're investigating all angles." "That's not what happened," Malik protested. "They cut out the beginning." Darlene sank onto the couch beside him, her face tight with worry. "I know, baby. I know." The next morning, Darlene's phone rang just as she was pouring their coffee. Malik watched her face darken as she listened to Vice Principal Wexler's voice on the other end. 10 days? She repeated incredulously. "Based on what evidence?" She listened for a moment longer. "We'll see about that, Mr. Wexler. Expect to hear from our lawyer." She hadn't even hung up when Malik's phone lit up with Ms. Avery's number. "Malik," his teacher's voice was rushed and quiet. "They took my phone. All my photos and messages from yesterday. The principal called me in this morning, told me to stay out of it or—" She paused. "Just be careful, okay? This isn't right. But they're playing hardball." After the call ended, Malik watched his mother pace the kitchen, muttering under her breath. Finally, she stopped and squared her shoulders. "Stay here," she ordered. "Do your homework. I need to make a call." Malik listened to her footsteps heading down the hallway to her bedroom. He heard the creak of her closet door, followed by the sound of boxes being moved. Through the thin walls, he could make out the beeps of a phone being turned on. An old one, by the sound of its startup tone. Darlene's voice drifted through the wall, tight with tension, as she waited for someone to answer. The silence stretched until finally a deep voice rumbled from the phone's speaker, too muffled for Malik to make out the words. His mother's response was clear and sharp. "It's about your son." The black sedan glided down the quiet street like a shark through dark water, its engine barely more than a whisper. Under the yellow glow of streetlights, the car's pristine surface reflected the modest houses of their neighborhood. It pulled to a stop in front of Malik's home with practiced precision. Malik stood at his bedroom window, heart pounding as he watched a tall figure emerge from the back seat. Even in the dim light, there was no mistaking Giovanni Vitale's commanding presence. His charcoal suit looked like it cost more than their monthly rent, each movement deliberate and controlled as he straightened his silk tie. "Mom," Malik called out, his voice cracking slightly. "He's here." Darlene appeared beside him, wringing her hands in her apron. "I know, baby. I know this isn't ideal, but—" The doorbell chimed, cutting through the tense silence. Malik followed his mother to the front door, hanging back as she opened it. The porch light illuminated Gio's face, older than Malik remembered, with deep lines around his eyes and silver threading through his dark hair. But his eyes were the same. Sharp, calculating, missing nothing. "Darlene," Gio nodded politely, then fixed his gaze on Malik. "Son." That single word hung in the air between them, heavy with 7 years of absence. Malik crossed his arms, studying the father he hadn't seen since he was 10. "Why are you here?" "May I come in?" Gio asked, directing the question to Darlene. She stepped aside, allowing him to enter their modest living room. His presence seemed to fill the space, making their furniture look smaller, shabbier. "I saw the footage," Gio said, turning to face Malik. "Both versions, the real one and their hack job." His voice carried a hint of an accent, smooth as aged whiskey. "You handled yourself well. Clean defense, controlled strikes. Where did you learn to fight like that?" "Church basement gym," Malik answered stiffly. "Father Mike teaches boxing." A ghost of a smile touched Gio's lips. "Good man, teaching you control. You won that fight. Now we make it stick." Darlene stepped forward. "Malik, I know this is complicated, but Sheriff Benton has too much power here. He's trying to paint you as some kind of thug, and the school board is falling in line." She looked at Gio. "Your father has resources, connections. He can help make sure the truth comes out." "Through what? Threats? Bribes?" Malik challenged, meeting Gio's steady gaze. "I won't be part of that." "There are many ways to fight corruption," Gio replied calmly. "Some require muscle, others money. But the most effective weapon is always the truth, when it's properly deployed." He moved to the window, scanning the street with practiced eyes. "We'll do this your way, son. Legal channels, public pressure, documented evidence. But understand, they're already playing dirty. We need to be prepared to counter every move." Malik watched his father's reflection in the window glass. "Why should I trust you? You disappeared for 7 years." Gio turned, and for a moment, something raw flickered across his composed features. "Because, despite my business, I have a code. Family comes first. And what they're doing to you, trying to destroy your future over a desk?" His hand clenched briefly. "That demands a response." "I don't want violence," Malik insisted. "No violence," Gio agreed, "but they need to learn that actions have consequences. Legal, public consequences that can't be brushed under the rug." Darlene touched Malik's shoulder. "Baby, it's late. You should try to get some sleep. We can figure out the details tomorrow." Malik looked between his parents, his mother's worried face, his father's dangerous stillness. The contrast was stark. Darlene in her simple house dress and apron, Gio in his $1,000 suit. Yet both wore the same expression of fierce protection. "Fine," Malik said finally. "But we do this right. No shortcuts, no threats. I want the truth to come out. All of it. The truth will be your shield," Gio promised. "And their noose." As Malik headed down the hallway to his room, he heard his parents speaking in low voices. He paused at his door, looking back. Gio stood at the living room window, his silhouette sharp against the glass. His father's stillness reminded Malik of the moments before a boxing match. That dangerous calm before explosive action. Through the partially open door, he watched Gio scan the darkness outside with the practiced eyes of a predator, one hand resting lightly on the window frame. In the glass reflection, Malik could see his father's expression, cold, focused, promising silent retribution to anyone who would dare harm his son. The morning sun streamed through the kitchen windows as Malik spread his notebooks across the breakfast table. His mother had made French toast, but it sat barely touched as he outlined his plan to Gio, who listened intently while sipping black coffee. "First, we file Freedom of Information requests," Malik explained, tapping his pen against the paper. "For the security footage, incident reports, everything. They can't legally hide that stuff." Gio set down his coffee cup with careful precision. "Legal channels are slow, son. While we wait, they'll be busy building their story. Then we get the parents involved," Malik continued. "Rosa says her live stream had hundreds of comments supporting me. People are already mad about how the sheriff's office twisted things." "Public pressure has value," Gio acknowledged, straightening his silk tie. "But someone gave that edited footage to the news. Someone who knows how to bury inconvenient truths." Darlene placed more French toast on the table, her movements anxious. Maybe both approaches could work together. Gio's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. The person who doctored that video, they'll have connections, patterns. One conversation with them could save weeks of paperwork. "You mean threaten them," Malik said flatly. "I mean persuade them to reconsider their loyalty to Sheriff Benton," Gio corrected. "People like that respond to pressure points." "No," Malik's voice was firm. "We do this clean. If we fight dirty, we're no better than them." A small smile touched Gio's lips. "You sound like your mother." He leaned forward, his presence filling the small kitchen. "But consider this. While you rally public support, I can gather information through my channels. No threats, no violence, just strategic conversations." Malik studied his father's face, searching for deception. "You'll stay in the background?" Like a shadow, Gio promised. You lead the charge. I'll be your insurance policy. After breakfast, Malik met Ms. Avery and Rosa at the Daily Grind, a coffee shop far enough from school to avoid unwanted attention. The place smelled of roasted beans and cinnamon, with local art covering exposed brick walls. Ms. Avery looked tired, dark circles under her eyes. She glanced around before pulling a manila envelope from her bag. I probably shouldn't be showing you these, she said quietly, but you need to know what you're up against. Rosa leaned in as Malik opened the envelope. Inside were printed emails between Superintendent Hayes, Principal Wexler, and someone named Caleb Halford. Malik's eyes widened as he read. They're talking about using incidents to push for charter conversion, Ms. Avery explained. Halford's a developer. He's been buying up property around town. Look at this. Rosa pointed to one email. Security concerns could fast-track the process. They were waiting for something like this to happen. Malik's hands tightened on the papers. They planned this? Maybe not specifically, Ms. Avery said, but they were ready to use whatever happened. The bell above the shop door chimed. Leon Griggs shuffled in, his janitor's keys jingling softly at his hip. He ordered a coffee, then made his way to their table with deliberate casualness. Thought I might find you here, he said quietly, settling into an empty chair. His aged eyes held decades of witnessed injustice. There's something you should know about those security cameras. Malik leaned forward. What about them? Sheriff's deputies come by sometimes, before games or rallies. They check the angles, adjust things. Leon's weathered hands wrapped around his coffee cup. Always seemed odd to me. So I started keeping track of when they'd visit, and what happened after. And, Rosa prompted, fights break out in those spots. Like clockwork. Leon's voice was barely above a whisper. But the cameras never quite catch how they start. Malik thought of the edited footage that made him look like the aggressor. They're rigging the system. Been that way since before you were born, Leon said. Different faces. Same game. They spent another hour reviewing the emails, making notes, building their case. Ms. Avery marked key passages that showed the pattern. Rosa researched Halford's other development projects, finding a trail of suspicious school conversions. When they finally packed up to leave, Malik felt energized despite the weight of what they'd learned. He had evidence now, real proof of corruption. His father's connections wouldn't be necessary after all. Outside, the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot. Malik shouldered his backpack, mind already racing with next steps. A patrol car crept past the coffee shop, moving slower than normal traffic. Through the tinted window, Malik could feel the deputy's eyes following his every movement, but he kept walking, head high. The evidence in his backpack felt like it was burning a hole through the fabric. But for the first time since the fight, Malik knew he had more than just his word against theirs. He had proof, and soon everyone would see it. Back at home, Malik sat at the kitchen table, still processing everything they'd learned at the coffee shop. Darlene paced the living room, her fingers twisting nervously as Gio reviewed the emails Ms. Avery had given them. There's something else you need to see, Darlene said suddenly, stopping her pacing. She disappeared into her bedroom and returned with a thick black ledger, its corners worn smooth from handling. I didn't think it was important before, but now... Malik leaned forward. What is it? 2 years ago, I did bookkeeping for Caleb Halford. Darlene set the ledger down, her hand resting on its cover. There were these payments I couldn't quite make sense of, going to Cedar River Security. Gio's expression sharpened. Cedar River? That's run by Benton's cousin, Marcus. I thought Halford was just moving money around for property taxes, Darlene continued, opening the ledger to show columns of neat figures. You know how developers do. But look at the amounts, the timing. Malik studied the pages. Regular payments, all just under $10,000, flowing from Halford's development company to Cedar River Security. What does this mean? Gio's finger traced down the columns, his jaw tightening. This isn't tax management. It's laundering. Clean money goes to Cedar River, comes back out dirty for bribes and payoffs. He looked up at Darlene. You kept copies? Everything's in here. She tapped the ledger. I always document everything, just in case. Malik pulled out his phone and started photographing pages. These numbers match the dates in those emails. When they started talking about security concerns at school. It's all connected, Gio said grimly. The fight wasn't random. They needed incidents, disruptions, anything to justify bringing in Cedar River Security full-time. Create enough problems, Malik pieced it together. And the state has to step in. Then Halford swoops in with his charter school proposal, Darlene added, and his hand-picked security contractor. Malik's fingers flew across his phone screen, capturing every page. We have to show people. This proves the whole thing was planned. It's not that simple, Gio cautioned, his voice low. These numbers, they're dangerous. People have disappeared for less. We can't just sit on this, Malik argued. They tried to ruin my life to push their scheme through. Darlene touched his shoulder. Your father's right. We need to be careful how we use this. The sheriff, the superintendent, Halford, they're all connected, Gio explained. This ledger threatens millions in contracts, years of kickbacks. They won't just roll over. Malik stood up, frustration evident in every movement. So what? We let them get away with it? Let them keep targeting kids like me? No, Gio said firmly. We use it smart. Build our case. Find more proof. Make it so big they can't bury it. I kept these records because something felt wrong, Darlene said, but I never imagined it went this deep. The ledger lay open between them, its pages filled with evidence of corruption that reached from their kitchen table all the way to the highest offices in town. Malik thought about Kenny, Cole, and their staged confrontation, pawns in a bigger game they probably didn't even understand. If we go public, Gio warned, we need ironclad proof. Not just numbers, but... The crunch of tires on gravel cut through the night air. Through the kitchen window, headlights swept across the yard, illuminating the side of a patrol car. Malik's heart jumped as he recognized the distinctive shape of a campaign hat in the driver's seat. Sheriff Benton, Darlene whispered, her face pale. Heavy boots stepped onto gravel. The beam of a flashlight played across their front windows. Each step of the sheriff's measured stride toward their porch echoed like a countdown. Gio moved with fluid efficiency, gathering the ledger and sliding it into his suit jacket. Malik quickly deleted the photos from his phone's main gallery, backing them up to a private cloud folder instead. Darlene straightened the kitchen, making it look like any normal family evening. The porch boards creaked under the sheriff's weight. His shadow fell across their welcome mat, dark and imposing. They could see his silhouette through the frosted glass of their front door, hand raised to knock. Sheriff Benton's knock echoed through the house. When Darlene opened the door, he filled the frame, 2 deputies flanking him on the porch. Evening, Ms. Carter. Benton's smile didn't reach his eyes. Got some business with your boy. What business? Darlene's voice was steady, but her hands gripped the doorframe. New evidence has come to light in the assault case. Benton adjusted his gun belt. We're here to take Malik into custody. Malik stepped forward, his heart pounding. What new evidence? The surveillance footage shows you attacking 3 students without provocation. Benton nodded to his deputies. Felony assault charges have been filed. That's a lie, Malik said. Rosa's video shows... Son, put your hands behind your back. Benton reached for his cuffs. Gio moved from the shadows, his presence filling the room. I'd like to see this warrant. Benton's eyes narrowed slightly. And you are? Giovanni Vitale, Malik's father. Gio's voice was calm but carried weight. I assume you have proper documentation? One deputy produced papers. Gio read them carefully while Benton watched, tension crackling between them. The warrant was legitimate, if suspicious in its timing. Malik, Gio said quietly, cooperate for now. Our lawyer will meet us at the station. Darlene's face crumpled as the deputies cuffed her son. Malik kept his head high, refusing to give Benton the satisfaction of seeing fear. They led him down the porch steps, past curious neighbors peeking through windows. Mom, it's okay, Malik called back. They can't twist the truth forever. At the station, they put Malik in an interview room with peeling paint and flickering fluorescent lights. The public defender arrived first, young, overwhelmed, clutching a battered briefcase. 20 minutes later, a woman in an expensive suit walked in, introducing herself as Patricia Chen from Martinez and Associates. Mr. Vitale retained us, Chen said, setting down her leather attaché case. I'll be taking point on this case. The public defender looked relieved. Chen reviewed the charges, her manicured nails tapping the desk as she read. The prosecution claims new video evidence shows premeditation, she said. But they're withholding it as part of an ongoing investigation. Rosa recorded everything, Malik insisted. Her live stream shows exactly what happened. Interesting you mentioned that. Chen pulled out her phone. The original video's been removed from all platforms. Technical glitch, they claim. Across town, Rosa was discovering the same thing. After deputies had examined her phone for evidence, her footage had vanished. Not just from social media, but from her device entirely. The backup she'd thought was safe in the cloud was corrupted, showing only static. Meanwhile, Gio's driver, Tony, sat in an unmarked car watching Deputy Myers leave the station. The deputy's cruiser wound through back roads to a decrepit fishing shack by the river. Tony filmed as Myers met a man in a Cedar River security jacket. Money changed hands. A USB drive disappeared into Myers's pocket. In the courthouse the next morning, Judge Martinez looked uncomfortable. The prosecution's case seemed solid on paper, but something felt off. Chen methodically pointed out inconsistencies, timeline issues, and the convenient disappearance of exculpatory evidence. Your Honor, Chen said, the state's case relies entirely on selective editing and vanishing footage. My client has strong community ties and no prior record. We request release pending the hearing. The judge studied Malik, then glanced at Gio sitting in the gallery. Everyone knew who Vitale was, even if they couldn't prove anything. But this wasn't about the father. It was about a teenager with clean grades and legitimate questions about the evidence against him. Given the circumstances, Judge Martinez said, I'm granting release with standard conditions. But, she fixed the prosecution with a stern look, I expect full disclosure of all video evidence at the hearing. Malik walked out of the courthouse into bright sunlight. Gio waited by his car, face unreadable. From the station steps across the street, Sheriff Benton watched them, a small smile playing at his lips. He looked like a man who'd lost a skirmish but expected to win the war. They're playing a dangerous game, Gio said as Malik approached. Good thing we know how to play too, Malik replied, refusing to look at Benton's smirking face. The car door opened smoothly on expensive hinges. Before getting in, Malik squared his shoulders, letting Benton and anyone else watching see that handcuffs and holding cells hadn't broken him. They'd tried to make him small, to make him afraid. Instead, they'd just made him more determined to expose their whole corrupt system. The next afternoon, Malik, Rosa, and Ms. Avery huddled at a corner table in the public library, speaking in whispers between the towering shelves. Ms. Avery's hands trembled slightly as she wrapped them around her paper coffee cup. They called at 3 a.m, she said, her voice tight. Said they knew where I lived, where my mother lived in Florida. Said teachers who can't keep quiet end up without jobs, or worse. Rosa leaned forward, her dark eyes flashing with anger. We need to report this. To who? Malik asked. The sheriff's department? Ms. Avery shook her head. I filed a complaint online with the state police, but honestly, I'm scared. She pulled out her phone, showing them a string of text messages from blocked numbers. Each one was more threatening than the last. You could stay with us, Malik offered. My mom wouldn't mind. I appreciate that, but I can't let them drive me from my home. Ms. Avery straightened her shoulders. We need to focus on getting the truth out. I've been documenting everything. A commotion near the front desk interrupted them. The librarian was answering her phone, her face growing pale. What? When? She turned toward their table. Ms. Avery. Your house? There's a fire. They raced outside. Smoke was visible rising above the trees just a few blocks away. Ms. Avery's legs gave out. Malik and Rosa caught her arms, helping her into Rosa's old Honda. They sped through the quiet streets, Rosa taking corners too fast. When they arrived, flames were already shooting through Ms. Avery's roof. She stumbled from the car in her sensible flats, watching helplessly as firefighters battled the blaze. The heat was intense even from across the street, and the acrid smell of burning plastic filled the air. Everything, she whispered. All my lesson plans, my mother's photos, my cat. Her voice broke. A firefighter approached, leading a soot-covered orange tabby. Found this little guy hiding in the basement window well. Ms. Avery clutched her cat, tears cutting tracks through the ash that had settled on her face. Neighbors gathered on their porches, murmuring and pointing. Some brought blankets, offered spare rooms. Malik called his mother. Within minutes, Darlene's car pulled up. She took one look at Ms. Avery, standing barefoot in the street with her smoke-smelling cat, and said, You're staying with us. No arguments. Back at their house, while Ms. Avery showered and borrowed clean clothes, Malik and Darlene went to check the ledgers. Darlene opened her bedroom closet, reached behind a row of hanging clothes, and froze. They're gone. Her voice was hollow. She pushed hangers aside frantically. The whole box is gone. Malik's stomach clenched. Without those ledgers, they had no proof of the payments between Halford and Cedar River Security. No evidence of the corruption. But Darlene's fear transformed into a small, fierce smile. She went to her dresser, opened her jewelry box, and removed a false bottom. From the hidden compartment, she pulled out a tiny thumb drive. I didn't trust paper, she said. Not after working for Halford. I photographed every page the day after I quit 3 years ago. High-resolution shots of every transaction, every note in the margins. Malik took the drive, turning it over in his hands. It was smaller than his thumb, but it held enough evidence to expose years of kickbacks and fraud. He slipped it into his pocket, patting it to make sure it was secure. Moving to the window, he peered through a gap in the curtains. A dark sedan was parked halfway down the block, its engine running. The streetlight gleamed dully off its tinted windows. Behind him, he could hear Ms. Avery talking softly to her cat in the guest room, Darlene making up the bed with fresh sheets. Normal sounds that felt surreal against the weight of the thumb drive in his pocket and the watchful presence of the car outside. The fire had been a message. The stolen ledgers were a warning. But somehow, their enemies had underestimated Darlene's foresight and Ms. Avery's determination. They thought they were dealing with a troublemaking student, a nosy teacher, and a single mom. Instead, they'd created a team that grew more dangerous with each attack. Rosa texted, Fire marshal saying electrical fault. BS. You okay? Malik typed back, Safe. Ms. A with us. Got evidence they tried to steal. Call you tomorrow. He watched the idling car, memorizing its shape and position. Whatever came next, they had to move carefully. One wrong step, and it wouldn't just be a house fire or stolen papers. But they had the truth now, safely digitized and hidden. All they needed was the right moment to use it. The cat wandered over, rubbing against his legs. From the street, the flash of brake lights suggested the watching car was finally leaving. Malik let the curtain fall back into place, feeling the hard edges of the thumb drive press against his leg through his pocket. Their evidence was safe, even if they weren't. In the kitchen, Darlene was making tea, the familiar routine a thin cover for her tension. Ms. Avery sat at the table, her wet hair wrapped in a towel, looking small in borrowed clothes, but her eyes were steel when she looked up at Malik. "They think they can scare us into silence," she said quietly. "They have no idea who they're dealing with." Rosa burst through the front door early the next morning, her backpack stuffed with papers and her laptop balanced precariously on top. Her dark hair was messy from the wind, and she hadn't even bothered with her usual camera gear. "You won't believe what I found," she said, spreading documents across the kitchen table. "Messages." Avery's cat watched from the windowsill as Rosa arranged property records, zoning maps, and printed emails in neat rows. Malik leaned over the papers, still nursing his first cup of coffee. "What are we looking at?" "Property transfers." Rosa pointed to highlighted sections. "Look at the dates. Halford's company has been quietly buying up land around the school for months. But this is the big one." She tapped a document dated just 2 weeks ago. "He's got an option to purchase the athletic fields. All of them. Football stadium, baseball diamond, track, everything." Darlene came closer, frowning. "Those fields have been school property for 50 years. They can't just sell them." "They can if the school goes into state receivership," Ms. Avery said quietly. She'd spent the night in their guest room and looked tired but determined in the morning light. If there's enough documented violence and instability, the state can take control. Then they can liquidate assets. Malik picked up one of the papers, studying the fine print. "The option is worth millions. Prime location, right by the river. Perfect for luxury condos," Rosa added. "Halford's company already has the architectural renderings. I found them on a developer's website. They just hadn't gone public yet." The pieces started falling into place in Malik's mind. So, the fight in class was bait, Ms. Avery finished. They needed incidents, documented problems they could point to as evidence the school was failing. The edited video, the arrest, even the fire. Malik's hands clenched. It's all about making the school look dangerous and out of control. Rosa nodded. Once the state takes over, they can bring in Cedar River Security full-time. Private security, private management, and private profits, Darlene said bitterly. Those ledgers make more sense now. Halford was paying people off to look the other way while he set this up. Gio appeared in the doorway, impeccable in another tailored suit despite the early hour. He'd been staying at a hotel in town, but his presence seemed to fill the kitchen. He studied the documents without touching them. "This is bigger than a schoolyard fight now," he said. "Real estate deals, corrupt officials, millions of dollars at stake. These people won't just back down if you expose them." "We have to try," Malik insisted. "They're trying to steal our school, turn our fight into their profit." "They'll come at you harder," Gio warned. "Not just threats. They'll try to destroy your reputation, your mother's job, anything they can use." Rosa straightened up. "Let them try. We have proof now. The property records, the security contracts, the doctored video. Once people see how it all connects, people see what they're told to see," Gio cut in. "Trust me on this. I've watched plenty of truth get buried under money and influence." "So, we just let them win?" Malik demanded. "Let them use me, use all of us, to steal what belongs to everyone?" Ms. Avery spoke up from where she sat, cradling her coffee. There are still good people in this town. Parents who care about their kids' education. Teachers who believe in doing what's right. And students who know how to make things go viral, Rosa added with a fierce grin. Malik studied the documents again, seeing beyond the legal language to what they really meant. The calculated cruelty, the cold manipulation of people's lives for profit. His jaw still ached from the fight, and he could smell traces of smoke in Ms. Avery's borrowed clothes. The truth is worth it, he said finally, meeting his father's eyes, even if it's dangerous. Especially if it's dangerous. Gio was silent for a long moment, then nodded slightly. Then we make sure the truth hits so hard they can't bury it. They spent the next hour planning their next moves. Rosa would compile everything into a digital timeline. Ms. Avery would reach out to other teachers quietly. Darlene would contact former co-workers who might have seen similar patterns in Halford's books. The cat jumped down from the windowsill and wound between their legs as they talked, perhaps sensing their determination. Outside, the morning grew brighter, sunlight catching on the scattered papers that mapped out corruption in neat typed lines. Malik's phone buzzed, a text from Kenny. "Meet us at the old mill tonight. We can settle this." He frowned at the screen, reading the message twice. The abandoned paper mill was on the edge of town, empty except for rats and rusted machinery. It was exactly the kind of place someone would choose for an ambush. Malik stared at Kenny's text message, his stomach tight with suspicion. He showed it to Rosa, who was still organizing documents on the table. "I'm going," he said, "but I need you to keep your phone on. Be ready." Rosa's eyes widened. "That's crazy. It's obviously a trap." "I know. But if I don't show up, they'll say I'm scared." Malik pocketed the thumb drive with the ledger photos. Just be ready to record or call for help. The old paper mill loomed against the darkening sky, its broken windows like empty eye sockets. Malik's footsteps echoed on the cracked pavement as he approached the loading dock where Kenny and Cole waited. Their Letterman jackets glowed red in the sunset. "Look who showed up," Kenny called out, his smile too wide. Cole lounged against a rusty rail, trying to look casual. Malik stayed by the corner, keeping space between them. His boxing training screamed danger. Their body language was wrong, too relaxed for guys who'd been humiliated in class. "What do you want?" Malik asked, scanning the shadows behind them. "To talk," Kenny said, spreading his hands. "Maybe we got off on the wrong foot." "Yeah," Cole added. "All this drama over a stupid desk? Let's work something out." Malik's muscles tensed as they tried to circle closer. He shifted his weight, keeping both in view. "There's nothing to work out. You attacked me, got caught, and now you're trying to cover it up." Kenny's fake smile vanished. "You think you're so smart, don't you? Coming here with your fancy clothes and your attitude. Running to Daddy when things get tough," Cole sneered. "Like you didn't run to yours?" Malik shot back. "At least my father doesn't hide behind a badge while—" A scrape of boots on metal cut him off. Dark shapes emerged from the mill's shadowy doorways. Large men in leather vests, with patches showing crossed axes. Iron Guard patches. Malik recognized them from town, the bikers Sheriff Benton used for unofficial work. "Crap," Malik muttered, backing up. He counted 5 men, all built like brick walls. Kenny's smirk turned ugly. "Not so tough now, huh?" The first biker lunged. Malik ducked the grab, driving an elbow into ribs. His boxing training took over. Slip, strike, move. He caught another with a hard right to the jaw, but there were too many. A massive arm locked around his throat from behind. Malik drove his heel down, broke free, but took a crushing blow to his ribs. He staggered, gasping. 2 more grabbed his arms. Pain exploded in his shoulder as they wrenched it back. A fist like a hammer smashed into his stomach. Another cracked across his jaw. Through blurring vision, he saw Kenny and Cole watching, their faces lit with mean satisfaction. Then the night erupted in new violence. 3 figures materialized from the darkness like avenging angels. Gio moved with terrifying grace, his expensive suit rippling as he broke the nearest biker's arm with a single sharp twist. The crack echoed off the mill walls. Gio's men were just as efficient. One swept a biker's legs, driving him face first into the concrete. The other caught a wild punch and turned it into a throw that sent 200 pounds of leather-clad muscle flying. Malik slumped against the wall, tasting blood. Gio's knee found another attacker's solar plexus with surgical precision. The man folded like paper. Kenny and Cole tried to run, but Gio's men cut them off. "Touch my son again," Gio said, his voice colder than the river in winter, "and there won't be enough left of you to—" Police sirens split the air. Red and blue lights strobed across the mill's weathered walls. Sheriff Benton emerged from his cruiser, deputies fanning out behind him. "Well, well," Benton drawled, taking in the scene with obvious satisfaction. "Looks like we caught ourselves a mobster threatening minors." "They jumped my son," Gio said quietly. "That's not how these fine citizens tell it." Benton nodded to the bikers picking themselves up. "They say you came here looking for trouble, making threats." Deputies moved in with handcuffs. Gio didn't resist, but his eyes found Malik's. A silent message passed between them. "Stay strong, stay smart. Giovanni Vitale, you're under arrest for witness intimidation and aggravated assault," Benton announced, loud enough for the gathering crowd of deputies to hear. "Get him out of here!" They led Gio to a cruiser. Kenny and Cole smirked from behind Benton's bulk. The bikers melted away into the shadows, their job done. Malik stayed where he'd fallen, ribs screaming with each breath. No one offered to help him up. No one called an ambulance. Benton looked down at him with cold satisfaction. "Looks like you took quite a fall there, boy," the sheriff said. "Should be more careful where you walk at night." The cruiser's taillights receded into the darkness, taking Gio away. Malik pressed his hand against his throbbing ribs, feeling blood trickle down his chin. The mill loomed silent above him, witness to another injustice in a town full of them. Malik winced as Darlene pressed the cold washcloth against his swollen jaw. They sat at their kitchen table, the first aid kit spread out between them. Every breath sent sharp pains through his ribs. "Hold still," Darlene said, dabbing antiseptic on a cut above his eye. Her hands trembled slightly. "These could have used stitches." "I'm okay, Mom." Malik tried to smile, but stopped when it hurt too much. Rosa sat across from them, her phone propped against a coffee mug. She pressed play, and Kenny's voice filled the kitchen. To talk. Maybe we got off on the wrong foot. The whole ambush had been captured in crystal-clear audio. The sounds of footsteps, the bikers emerging, the violence, it was all there. Even Kenny and Cole's commentary as Malik was beaten. "I hid behind the loading dock as soon as I saw you heading in," Rosa explained. Knew something wasn't right. Darlene's jaw tightened as she listened to the recording. "Those animals," she whispered. "And that sheriff, arresting Gio instead of them." "They planned it perfectly," Malik said. "Set up the trap, had the bikers ready, knew Gio would come for me." He pressed the ice pack harder against his ribs. They wanted him arrested. Now they can paint him as the violent one. A soft knock at the back door made them all jump. It was Leon, still in his janitor's uniform despite the late hour. He stepped into the kitchen, his weathered face creasing with concern when he saw Malik's injuries. "Lord have mercy," he muttered. "They worked you over good, didn't they?" Malik nodded carefully. "But we got proof this time. Rosa recorded everything." "That's good." Leon reached into his pocket. "But I got something better." Metal clinked as he set an ancient key ring on the table. Dozens of keys, large and small, hung from the main loop. "What are those for?" Rosa asked. Every door in Grantham High. Been carrying them 30 years. Leon's eyes held a fierce light. Including the records room, the one they think is locked tight. Malik leaned forward despite his aching body. What's in there? Everything, Leon said simply. Security footage going back 5 years. Incident reports, financial records. He tapped one key that looked older than the others. They don't know I kept copies when they switched to electronic locks. Too cheap to change the old mechanisms. The truth, Malik said softly. It's all just sitting there. Waiting for someone brave enough to show it, Leon agreed. Someone who won't back down, no matter how hard they hit him. Rosa was already typing on her phone. The school board meeting is next week. They always live stream it for parents who can't attend. She looked up, eyes bright. But I've got access to the AV setup. We could show everything. The unedited fight footage, the mill recording, whatever we find in those records. In front of the whole town, Malik said, with their cameras running. Darlene touched his bruised hand. Baby, are you sure? These people, they've shown what they're willing to do. That's exactly why we have to do it, Malik replied. They think they can beat us into staying quiet. But Mom, you taught me better than that. Leon nodded slowly. Your daddy's way would be to hit back harder. But sometimes the truth hits hardest of all. We'll need help, Rosa said. Ms. Avery, your mom's ledger photos, everything we can get. Malik's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Your father says to be careful, it read. He can help if you need it. Malik typed back quickly. We're doing it our way. Then he looked at the others gathered around his kitchen table. First, we need to see what's in that records room. Tomorrow night, Leon said. I'll leave the side door unlocked during basketball practice. Security's always watching the gym then. Rosa held up her phone. I'll set up the live stream channel now. They'll never be able to take it down fast enough once it starts. Darlene squeezed Malik's hand. I'll get those ledger photos ready. And baby? She touched his bruised face gently. I'm proud of you. For fighting smart, instead of just fighting. Malik looked at the key ring glinting under the kitchen lights. Each key was a door, and behind those doors lay the truth about Grantham High, about Kenny, about Benton, about all of it. They'd tried to bury that truth under threats and violence, but they'd made a mistake. They'd thought Malik would break like others had before him. Instead, each blow had only made him more determined. Now he had proof, allies, and a plan. Let's get to work, he said, reaching for the keys. The gymnasium buzzed with nervous energy as parents and students filled the bleachers. Basketball championship banners hung overhead, their gold letters catching the fluorescent lights. The folding chairs on the floor were packed, forcing latecomers to stand along the walls. Security guards, not Benton's usual crew, watched from the doorways. Malik sat in the front row of the bleachers, his bruises still visible but fading to yellow-green. Rosa crouched behind her laptop at the AV station, running final checks on the video feeds. 3 cameras were positioned to catch every angle of the proceedings, and her live stream setup was already pulling in viewers. Testing, she whispered into her headset. Sound levels good? She gave Malik a thumbs up when he nodded. Ms. Avery sat 2 rows back, a manila envelope clutched in her hands. Her house still smelled of smoke, but she'd worn her best blazer tonight. The emails inside that envelope traced a web of corruption from Wexler's office straight to Halford's development company. You remember what to do if they try to cut the power? Malik asked Rosa. She patted her backup battery pack. Got 3 hours of juice right here. Plus, my phone's hotspot is ready if they kill the Wi-Fi. She grinned. They can't stop the signal. Leon moved through the crowd like a shadow, nodding to former students who'd shown up after hearing rumors something big was coming. His key ring was tucked safely in his pocket. They wouldn't need it anymore. Everything they'd found in the records room was copied and ready. Darlene touched Malik's shoulder. "Just got a text from Gio's lawyer," she whispered. "He made his call. The investigator's on his way." Malik remembered visiting his father in jail yesterday. Through the glass partition, Gio had looked perfectly composed despite his orange jumpsuit. "Sometimes," he'd said, "you don't need muscle to win. You just need the right audience." The crowd's murmur dropped as Superintendent Hayes walked in, her heels clicking on the hardwood. She took her place at the center of the board table, flanked by other members in their business suits. They looked like executives about to announce layoffs, not educators discussing children's futures. Principal Wexler hurried to whisper something in Hayes's ear. She frowned, then tapped the microphone. "Due to technical difficulties, we'll be conducting tonight's meeting without the usual video stream." Rosa's fingers flew across her keyboard. "Too late," she muttered. "We're already live. 200 viewers and climbing." Malik felt the flash drive in his pocket, heavy with truth. The unedited security footage showed everything. Kenny's crew planning the original attack, Benton's deputies adjusting cameras, the systematic harassment of other students who'd been targeted before him. Each file was time-stamped and backed up in triplicate. "Remember, Mrs." Avery had told him that morning, "Speak clearly and stick to facts. Don't let them rattle you." A police cruiser's lights flashed through the high windows. Not a local car, state plates. Darlene squeezed Malik's hand. "That's our backup arriving." The board members shuffled papers, preparing to begin. Hayes lifted her gavel, but before she could bring it down, the gym's side door opened. Sheriff Benton strode in, his badge catching the light. He scanned the crowd until he found Malik, then smiled coldly. Malik stood, his heart steady despite everything. The flash drive felt warm in his palm as he walked toward the podium. Every step echoed in the sudden quiet. He passed Kenny's parents, who wouldn't meet his eyes, past Cole's empty seat. The quarterback was still hiding after the mill incident. Past the local newspaper reporter who'd printed Benton's lies without question. Rosa's voice came through his earpiece. "Live stream hitting 500 viewers. Whole town's watching." He reached the podium and placed the flash drive beside the microphone. Behind him, he heard Ms. Avery opening her envelope, Darlene unfolding the ledger photos, Leon shifting forward in his seat. They were ready. The gymnasium fell silent as Hayes prepared to begin the meeting. Malik's fingers rested on the flash drive, one small piece of plastic that would change everything. Through the windows, he could see more state vehicles arriving, their lights painting the parking lot in red and blue. The truth was no longer trapped in locked rooms or buried in doctored footage. It was here, in this gym, ready to break free. They'd tried to teach Malik his place, tried to make him accept their lies. Instead, he'd learned a different lesson. Sometimes justice just needs a spotlight. Hayes raised her gavel one final time. Malik stepped up to the microphone. Hayes's gavel struck the wooden block, but Malik was already speaking. "Before we begin tonight's agenda, I have evidence of systematic corruption in our school system." His voice carried through the microphone, clear and steady. The projector hummed to life, casting a bright rectangle on the wall behind the board members. The unedited security footage began to play, showing Kenny and Cole approaching Malik's desk that first day. Unlike the cropped version Benton had released, this showed everything. The Confederate flag sticker, Kenny's first shove, Cole flipping the desk. The sound of Malik's backpack hitting the floor echoed through the gym's speakers. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the violence unfolded. Parents covered their mouths watching Kenny throw the first punch, seeing how Malik defended himself against 3 attackers. Ms. Avery's calls for help were clear on the audio. The full context changed everything. "This is the real footage," Malik said. "Not the edited version Sheriff Benton gave to the news." He clicked to the next file. And here's why it was changed. Email headers flashed across the screen. Messages between Superintendent Hayes, Principal Wexler, and Caleb Halford detailed their plan. Words like incidents, security concerns, and state intervention jumped out in highlighted yellow. They needed the school to look dangerous, Malik continued, his voice growing stronger. Because Mr. Halford here had already arranged to buy our athletic fields once the state took control. He nodded to Darlene, who stood and held up enlarged photos of the ledger pages. These are records of payments from Cedar River Security to various officials, laundered through shell companies. The gymnasium erupted in angry murmurs. Hayes banged her gavel repeatedly. "This is out of order! Security! Shut down that projector!" The double doors burst open. Sheriff Benton strode in with Halford and several deputies. "This meeting is now a crime scene," Benton announced. "Everyone stay seated while we secure potential evidence." But the crowd was already on their feet, shouting questions. Parents pressed forward, phones recording everything. Rosa's fingers flew across her keyboard, making sure every second streamed live to the thousands now watching online. Suddenly, 3 men in leather vests pushed through the crowd, Iron Guard members playing their part in Benton's scheme. They charged toward the stage where Malik stood. The first one reached for the laptop. Malik grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall and pulled the pin. White chemical powder blasted into the biker's face, creating a choking cloud. The man stumbled backward, crashing into his partners. Leon appeared like a ghost in the chaos, his mop handle spinning with the skill of decades. He caught one guard in the stomach, another across the shoulders. Parents surged forward, forming a wall between the students and Benton's men. "The files are already uploaded," Rosa shouted over the noise. "You can't delete them anymore." Through the gym's windows, emergency lights painted the scene in strobing red and blue. State police vehicles squealed into the parking lot. Investigators in suits pushed through the doors, badges raised. "State Bureau of Investigation!" A senior agent's voice cut through the chaos. "Everyone freeze! This is now a state-level investigation." The Iron Guard members tried to slip away, but parents blocked the exits. Deputies looked uncertainly at Benton, who had gone pale. Halford was already backing toward a side door when 2 agents intercepted him. The lead investigator reached the stage, speaking into his radio. "Evidence team, secure those computers. Nothing gets deleted." He turned to Malik. "Young man, we got a very interesting call about tonight's meeting. I think you have some files we need to see." Malik stood straight at the podium, his voice carrying over the settling crowd. The live stream counter showed over 10,000 viewers. Everything they'd discovered was now impossible to hide. "You told me where I could sit," he said, looking directly at Kenny's parents, then at Benton, Hayes, and finally Halford. "Now we all see where you've been sitting. And on whom." The silence that followed felt like a thunderclap. State agents moved through the crowd, collecting devices and statements. Ms. Avery handed over her envelope of emails. Rosa's archived footage played on repeat on the wall, the truth looping endlessly for all to see. The gymnasium that had witnessed so many games, victories, and defeats now held a different kind of score settling. Parents hugged their children. Students filmed everything on their phones. The power structure that had seemed so untouchable just hours ago was crumbling in real time, live-streamed for the world to witness. Through it all, Malik remained at the podium, watching justice unfold with quiet satisfaction. The flash drive that had started it all sat innocently beside the microphone, its small light blinking steadily like a beacon in the storm. The arrests started at dawn the next morning. State police cruisers rolled through Grantham's quiet streets, lights flashing but sirens silent. Sheriff Benton was led out of his house in handcuffs, still wearing his bathrobe. His son Cole watched from an upstairs window, face pale with shock. At the school district office, Superintendent Hayes was escorted from her morning coffee meeting. The charges echoed through the building: conspiracy, fraud, evidence tampering. Her perfectly maintained composure finally cracked as cameras caught her ducking into the back of an unmarked car. Principal Wexler didn't wait for them to come. He resigned by email at midnight, but state investigators found him at his sister's lake house by noon. The evidence was already overwhelming: emails, texts, and financial records painting a clear picture of corruption. Caleb Halford proved harder to find. He'd emptied his office and disappeared, but his private jet never left the regional airport. State police found him in the hangar, arguing with his pilot about weather delays. The developer's expensive suit couldn't hide his desperation as they read him his rights. Kenny Mays and his father showed up at an emergency school board meeting to appeal his expulsion. They left quickly when parents began sharing video clips of the mill ambush on their phones. Both Kenny and Cole's football scholarships were withdrawn within days. Ms. Avery returned to her classroom to a standing ovation from her students. The school board, under temporary state oversight, awarded her full back pay and a formal apology. The insurance check for her burned house arrived with a note promising priority investigation of the arson. Malik watched it all unfold with a mix of satisfaction and exhaustion. His shoulder still ached from the mill fight, but he stood straighter now. Students who'd once avoided his gaze now smiled and nodded in the halls. Even the football team kept their distance, their former arrogance deflated by their leader's disgrace. Gio's release from jail came without fanfare. He emerged into the sunshine, straightened his tie, and met Malik for lunch at a small diner downtown. Their conversation was quiet, but meaningful. "I'm pulling back from certain operations," Gio said, stirring his coffee. "Legitimate business only from now on. Your mother was right. There are better ways to handle things." Malik nodded, understanding the weight of this change. "The truth worked," he said. "It did." Gio's smile was small but genuine. "You showed me something, son." The town held meetings in churches and community centers, addressing years of ignored problems. Leon spoke about patterns he'd witnessed over decades. Parents shared stories of their children's experiences. Rosa's video footage became a teaching tool for the district's new anti-bullying program. The old power structure's collapse revealed deeper roots of change. Cedar River Security's contracts were terminated. The athletic fields remained with the school. A new sheriff was appointed, promising transparency and community oversight. In the third-floor English classroom, the desk that had sparked everything sat empty for weeks. Students would glance at it during class, but no one claimed it as territory. The Confederate flag sticker was gone, replaced by fresh paint and possibility. When the new school year began, Malik arrived early on the first day. The hallways still held that floor wax smell, but something felt different, lighter. He walked into Ms. Avery's classroom and paused in the doorway, taking in the scene. New posters covered the walls, diverse authors, protest poets, voices of change. The honor roll board now showed faces of every color. Morning sunlight streamed through clean windows, making the room glow. Malik moved to the desk by the window, his steps unhurried. A small brass plate caught his eye, newly mounted on the desktop. The engraving was simple but powerful. "Open to all." He ran his fingers over the letters, feeling their permanence. Rosa came in, camera hanging around her neck as always. She chose a desk 2 spaces over, unpacking her notebook with a quiet smile. Other students filtered in, filling the room with casual chatter. No one stared or whispered when Malik sat down. Movement in the hallway drew his attention. Gio stood just outside the door, wearing one of his immaculate suits. Their eyes met briefly. His father gave a single, dignified nod. pride without possession, approval without control. Then he turned and walked away, footsteps fading into the school's morning bustle. Malik settled into his seat as Ms. Avery began taking attendance. The desk felt solid beneath his arms, no longer a symbol of division, but a simple place to learn. Through the window, he could see Grantham spreading out below the school hill, its streets and buildings bathed in new day's light. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.